My son looked me straight in the eyes that morning and promised he would be there when I woke up. 6 hours later, I opened my eyes in a recovery room with a bandage on my wrist, $40 in my pocket, a dead phone, and a nurse standing over me with the kind of face people make when they have to tell you something that is not medical, but still feels like a wound. She said, "Your son left. She said he told us you had other arrangements." I did not have other arrangements. I had nothing. No ride, no plan, no one. And I was about to walk into a hospital lobby that would change every single thing I thought I knew about my life, about my family, and about the man I had been quietly becoming for the last 30 years. Because in less than 4 minutes, a stranger in a wheelchair was going to roll up next to me and say 11 words that would break my life open like an egg. Pretend to be my grandson. My driver is pulling around now. I know how that sounds. I know exactly what you are thinking because I thought the same thing. That she was confused, that she was lonely, that she was not all there. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years teaching high school history and 9 more as a principal. I have heard every kind of story a human being can tell, and I know the difference between the truth and the small lies a desperate mind builds to survive a bad afternoon. So believe me when I tell you that what I am about to share with you actually happened. Every word, every silence, every glance. And if you sit with me all the way to the end, you will understand how a single sentence from a stranger in a hospital lobby became the exact line between the life I had been quietly enduring and the life I had been meant for all along. My name is Daniel, and until that Wednesday in October, I thought I understood what it meant to be alone. I did not. The procedure itself was nothing. A ganglion cyst on my wrist that had been bothering me for 2 years, an hour under light sedation, 90 minutes of recovery. The clinic required someone to drive you home because you could not drive yourself. That was the rule. I had not asked my son. He had offered. He called me the Sunday before and said, "Dad, I will be there. Do not worry about it. Do not worry about it." Those were his exact words, and I believed him. I should have known something was wrong when he barely spoke during the drive over. He kept his eyes on the road. He kept his hands at 10 and 2. He answered the small questions with smaller answers. He sat in the waiting area for maybe 20 minutes after they took me back. And then he did something I still cannot explain sitting here today. He walked to the front desk. He told the nurse he had a work emergency. He told her his father had made other arrangements. He left his phone number in case they needed to reach the family. And then he walked out of the building where his father lay unconscious under sedation. That was the entirety of his concern for the man who had worked double shifts 2 summers in a row so he could attend a school that did not offer financial aid. That was the entirety of his loyalty to the man who had driven 11 hours each way every school holiday for years, just to spend a weekend on a couch that was too short for him. When the nurse woke me in recovery, I was groggy and my arm ached, and the first word out of my mouth was his name. Where is he? She had the look nurses get when they have to deliver information that is not medical but still cuts. She told me what I just told you. He had left. He had said I had other arrangements. I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles for what felt like a very long time. And then I did what you do when you are 63 years old and you have spent a lifetime being fine no matter what is actually happening inside you. I smiled at her. I thanked her. I told her I was okay. They discharged me into the main lobby. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The space was moderately busy. Families coming and going. A few elderly patients waiting for rides. The smell of industrial cleaner and bad coffee. I sat in a padded chair near the window and tried to think. $40 in my pocket. My car sitting in my own driveway 45 minutes away. My neighbor somewhere in Arizona visiting her grandchildren. My brother 40 minutes in the other direction with a wife and a history that made asking him for anything feel like taking out a loan I would spend the rest of my life repaying in interest. I sat there doing the math on a taxi home and wondering how a man reaches 63 years old and ends up in a chair like this, and that was the exact moment I heard her voice. "Excuse me," I turned. She was in a wheelchair, maybe 78, maybe 80, white hair pulled back, cream-colored blazer, pearl earrings. The kind of posture that tells you a person was raised to sit up straight and never once forgot the lesson. Her eyes were sharp and clear and fixed entirely on me. I could not help but notice she said that the young man who came in with you this morning left without you. "You were here this morning?" I asked. "I come in every Wednesday," she said. "I notice things." She folded her hands in her lap. You look the way my late husband looked the day his brother told him he was on his own. I recognized that expression. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. She leaned forward slightly. I have a proposition for you. My driver is pulling around in about 3 minutes. I would like you to ride with me. And I would like you to do me the favor of pretending just for the next few minutes that you are my grandson. She paused, and then she said the part I was not ready for. The young man who abandoned you is still in the parking lot. I watched him on my phone. He is sitting in his car out there. I suspect he is waiting to make sure you find a way home, so that he can tell himself he is not the kind of person who leaves his father stranded. When my driver pulls up, I want him to see you walk out of these doors with me. I want him to watch you leave in a car that costs more than his house. I stared at her. Why would you do that? Because nobody should be left in a hospital lobby by their own child, she said simply. And because I could use the company. There was something in the way she said it. Not dramatic, not performative. Just quiet and certain. The way people speak when they have lived long enough to stop wasting words. I looked through the glass doors toward the parking lot. I could not see his car from where I sat, but I knew the shape of his day. He was probably on his phone justifying it to himself. My driver is named Robert, she said. When he arrives, just stand with me. That is all I am asking. I stood with her. Robert came through the automatic doors 2 minutes later. A tall man in a dark jacket who moved through the lobby like someone who had done this 1,000 times. He nodded at her. Mrs. Whitmore ready? Robert, she said, this is Daniel. See, he will be riding with us today. Robert did not miss a beat. Of course. Good afternoon, sir. We went through the doors. And there in the loading zone was a black Mercedes SUV. Long and clean. The kind of vehicle that makes people stop in the middle of a parking lot and look. As Robert helped Mrs. Whitmore from the wheelchair into the back seat, I let my eyes drift to the far end of the lot. And that is when I saw it. A silver sedan, my son's car. And behind the wheel, my son, phone down, watching. His window was open. His face was doing something complicated I had not seen on it in a very long time. I got into the Mercedes. Robert closed the door. The sound it made was quiet and solid, like something being sealed shut. The interior smelled like leather and something floral. Very low from the speakers, something classical was playing. I looked out the tinted window and watched my son's face as we pulled away. He had stepped out of his car. He was saying something I could not hear. His arms were at his sides. His mouth was open. And then we turned out of the lot and he was gone. Well, Mrs. Whitmore said. That went well. You could see him, I asked. I could see enough. She settled back against the seat. He did not look triumphant. That is a start. We rode in silence for a moment. Then I said, I have to ask you again. Why are you doing this? She turned to look at me. In the afternoon light coming through the window, her face was composed and kind and a little sad around the edges. 30 years ago, she said, my daughter was left alone in a different kind of waiting room by people who were supposed to love her. Nobody helped her. I have thought about that every day of my life since. What might have happened if just one person had sat down beside her? She turned back to the window. I sit next to people now, she said, when I can. We pulled off the main road after about 20 minutes and onto a private lane lined with old oaks. The kind of trees that have been growing long enough to make everything underneath them feel shaded and permanent. At the end of the lane there was a house. Though calling it a house the way I called my place a house was like calling the Pacific Ocean a pond. Georgian colonial, white columns, red brick, acres of lawn rolling out from the base of it, gardens along the south side, a fountain near the entrance already lit for the evening even though the sun had not fully set. This is your home, I said. It was not a question. Has been for 40 years, she said. My late husband built it when the company was young. I have thought about selling it. I never do. A woman met us at the door, mid-50s, efficient, warm smile. Mrs. Whitmore introduced her as Carol, who managed the household. Carol looked at me the way people look at unexpected additions to a routine. Professional composure over genuine surprise. She asked if I would be staying for dinner. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore said before I could answer. We ate in a dining room that could have held my entire faculty. Roast salmon, potatoes, a green salad. A wine that I found out later cost more than my first car. Mrs. Whitmore ate with deliberate enjoyment and talked to me like she had known me for years. She asked about my teaching career, what subjects I covered, whether I missed it, and she listened when I answered. Actually listened. Not the way people listen when they are waiting for their turn to speak, but the kind of listening that makes you feel like what you are saying matters. Somewhere in the middle of the meal, I said, I still do not know your first name. Eleanor, she said. But most people have called me Mrs. Whitmore for so long that I sometimes forget Eleanor exists. I like Eleanor better, I said. She smiled, a real one. So do I, she said. After dinner, she had Carol show me to a guest room. She told me Robert would take me home in the morning, but that she had something she wanted to discuss with me first, if I was willing to stay. I almost said no. 30 years of being practical, of not inconveniencing anyone, of making myself small so I would fit inside the life I had been given's instead of the one I might have chosen. All of it rose up in my chest like a reflex. Then I thought about the hospital lobby, about my son walking out, about $40 and no way home. I will stay, I said. I did not sleep much that night. The room was large and quiet. The sheets felt expensive. I lay awake doing what I always did when the world moved too fast. I went over the details, looking for the catch. A wealthy elderly woman invites a stranger home from a hospital lobby. That sentence has about 15 ways it ends badly. But when I traced back through the afternoon, I could not find one thing that felt wrong. She had given me nothing but consideration. She had asked for nothing but company. Whatever she wanted to discuss, I could listen and then decide. In the morning, Carol brought coffee and a breakfast I did not expect. Eggs, toast, fresh orange juice, a bowl of sliced fruit. Eleanor came in about 20 minutes later, moving more easily than she had the day before, without the wheelchair, using a cane instead. She sat across from me and for a moment just drank her coffee, looking out the window at the lawn where the morning light was laying itself flat across the grass. Then she set down her cup, and she said the sentence that changed the rest of my life. I want to tell you about my company, she said. Whitmore Property Group. I knew the name vaguely, the way you know names that appear on buildings and signs, but that you have never had reason to look up. What I did not know was the scale. She walked me through it the way someone does, when they are not trying to impress you, but need you to understand. Residential and commercial real estate across 4 states. A portfolio built and developed and acquired over 5 decades. A management division, a development arm, a charitable foundation. Current value, she said. Somewhere above $300 million. I set my coffee cup down slowly, very slowly. I am telling you this, she said, because I want you to understand that what I am about to propose is not a small thing, and I want you to be able to say no with full information. What are you proposing? I asked. She folded her hands on the table. I am 81 years old, she said. My husband died 11 years ago. My daughter, the one I mentioned in the car, died 14 years ago. She had 2 children, my grandchildren. They are adults now. They live their own lives in different states. They are good people. They are not interested in the business. They have told me so plainly, and I respect that. She looked at me steadily. For the last 3 years, I have been searching for someone to bring into the company, not just a manager. Someone to learn it from the inside. Someone who can carry it forward with the same values my husband and I built it on. She paused. And yesterday, when I saw you sitting in that lobby, something told me to go and speak to you. I do not usually act on instincts like that. I am not a sentimental woman by nature. But I have also learned that when something feels that certain, you pay attention to it. Eleanor, I said slowly. You do not know me. I know more than you think, she said. Carol ran a background check last night. I hope you will forgive the efficiency. The corner of her mouth moved. 31 years of teaching. 9 as a principal. Commendations from the district. No criminal record. No debt beyond a manageable mortgage. Colleagues who, when I spoke to 2 of them this morning, described you as someone who kept his word. She tilted her head. I know enough, she said, to have this conversation. I sat with that for a long moment. Outside, a bird was doing something complicated in the oak tree nearest the window. What would this look like? I asked. You would come here, she said. Not as an employee. As a partner in training. You would learn the business. Meet the people who run the various divisions. Spend time understanding how everything connects. I would pay you a salary during that period, more than your pension, I imagine. And when I am confident you understand it, we would move toward a formal partnership arrangement. And eventually a position in my estate planning. I looked at her. You are talking about making me your heir. I am talking about giving the company a future, she said. Those are related things. I told her I needed time to think. She said she had expected that and that Robert would drive me home whenever I was ready. I asked for an hour and she gave me the library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves. A window seat that looked out at the fountain. I sat in that library alone and thought about my life with the clarity you only get When something shifts beneath the floor you have been standing on for decades. My son and I had never been close. Not the way I had hoped. His mother and I divorced when he was 12. She moved him 3 states away. I had driven or flown out to see him every chance I had, and it was never quite enough. He grew up thinking I had chosen something over him, though what that something was I could never get him to name. The Sunday calls had become every other Sunday, then once a month, then something closer to obligation. I had told myself it was normal. Children grow up and move away and build their own lives, and you adjust. But a father sitting in a hospital lobby alone while his son sits in a parking lot waiting to see if he found a way home. That was not distance. That was something else entirely. And my brother. We had not spoken much since our mother's estate was settled, 7 years ago, in a way that left both of us feeling like the other had gotten something they did not deserve. We were not enemies. We were not friends. We were blood and obligation and nothing else. I walked back to the dining room. Eleanor was still sitting there. I said yes. The months that followed were unlike anything I had known. Robert drove me back and forth in the early weeks while I still had obligations. Wrapping up a consultation I had agreed to with the district, a tenant in my spare room whose lease was not up. By winter I had moved into the East Wing guest suite at Eleanor's suggestion. It felt enormous and strange for the first few weeks, and then gradually slowly began to feel like somewhere I actually lived. Eleanor was a patient teacher. Every morning after breakfast she walked me through some aspect of the company, how the residential division was structured, why they had made certain acquisitions and not others, what she looked for when evaluating a property management team. She had a mind like a filing cabinet, precise and organized, and she expected me to keep up. I did. 30 years of teaching teenagers meant I knew how to absorb material, and I discovered something I had not expected. I had an appetite for this, for the logic of it. The way a portfolio could be read like a long argument with a thesis and evidence and counterpoints. One evening after Eleanor had gone to bed early, Carol found me in the study. "She has purpose again," Carol said. I had not seen her like this in years. "You gave that back to her." I did not know how to answer that, so I just nodded. And then in November my son called. I was in the study reviewing documents when my phone lit up with his name, and I felt the old reflex pick up in my chest. Make it easy. Smooth it over. I let it ring. He called again the next day. On the third call I answered. "Dad," he said, "I have been trying to reach you." His voice had that careful quality it gets when he knows he has done something wrong and is calculating how wrong it actually was. "I heard you moved. Where are you living?" "I am fine," I said. "How did you hear?" A pause. "Someone from your old neighborhood mentioned it. Listen, I want to explain about the hospital." "You do not have to explain." "I do, because I feel terrible. Kevin there was something happening at work, and I panicked, and I made a bad call. I knew you would figure it out. I knew you would be okay." "You knew I had $40 and a bandaged wrist," I said. Silence. "I am not calling to go over it again," I said. "I just want you to know that I am well. I am living somewhere that suits me. And I think we should give each other some space for a while." "Space," he said, like I had said the word in a language he was still learning. "Dad, what is going on? I have been hearing things. People are saying you are living in some mansion with an old woman that nobody knows. People can say what they like," I said. "Hey, are you? Is this woman taking advantage of you? Because if someone is exploiting you in some way, I need to know. I am your son. I have a responsibility here." The word responsibility hit me somewhere that had been numb for a very long time. I stood up from the desk and walked to the window that looked out at the side garden. The fountain was still running, even in November. A small luxury Eleanor refused to turn off. "You had a responsibility in October," I said. "At a hospital, you remember." He went quiet. Then he said, "I want to come see you." "Not yet," I said. And I ended the call. I told Eleanor at dinner. She listened without interrupting. Then she set down her fork. "He will come regardless," she said. "When people feel like they are losing access to something, they show up. He does not know what is here. He only knows something has changed, and that is enough." She was right, as she usually was. But it was not my son who came first, it was my brother. He showed up at the gate one Saturday in December. I never found out how he got the address. And Robert, following standing protocol, called the house before letting anyone in. I stood in the hallway for a long moment. And then I told Robert to let him through. He walked into the front room and stood there looking at everything. The chandelier, the artwork, the rugs, the height of the ceilings. His eyes moved through the room in a very specific order, and in that sequence I could see exactly what he was thinking. Daniel, he said. My God. Hello, I had no idea. He spread his hands. I heard things, but I thought people were exaggerating. Who is this woman? Her name is Eleanor Whitmore, I said, and she is. You are living here, I am. He sat down without being invited, which was characteristic. My brother had always moved through spaces as if his presence entitled him to them. Listen, he said, I am not here to pry. I want you to know that. I know we have not been close lately, and I know part of that is on me. When Mom's estate was settled, I handled it badly. I have wanted to say that for a while. He had not wanted to say that for a while. If he had wanted to say it, he would have said it in the 7 years since our mother died. But I sat down across from him and waited, because I had learned from Eleanor that silence is its own kind of pressure, and most people will fill it with the truth if you let them. I have been having a rough year financially, he said. There it was. The investment my wife and I made in her brother's business did not pan out the way we hoped. We are not destitute, do not misunderstand. But things are tighter than they should be at our age. I see, I said. And when I heard about all of this, he said, gesturing at the room, I thought maybe we could figure out a way to help each other. Family helping family. You know how I have always felt about that. I knew how he had always felt about that. He had felt that family helped family when there was something in it for him, and was less available on the occasions when the help needed to flow the other direction. What kind of help are you looking for? I asked. Just a bridge, he said. A short-term thing. A loan, really. Until we can restructure. And then he named a number. It was significant. Larger than I could have imagined him asking for. Larger than a bridge. I looked at him, my brother, 4 years younger. Someone whose childhood I shared, whose face I had seen at every Thanksgiving table for 6 decades. There was something real in him under all the calculation. The way there is usually something real in people even when they are at their worst. But the realness does not obligate you. I cannot help you with that, I said. He blinked. Daniel, I am not in a position to be lending money, and even if I were, I would want to think carefully about it, given our history. His expression shifted. That shift people make when the polite layer dissolves. Our history, he said. What does that mean? It means that when I needed help, you were not there, I said. Not for the money I asked for when I needed the roof done. Not when I called you after the divorce and told you I was struggling. Not once in the last 15 years. I kept my voice level. I am saying this calmly because I mean it calmly. I am not angry. I am just clear. He stood up. His face went through several things in quick succession and settled on something that looked like wounded dignity. I came here as your brother, he said. I know you did, I said. And I am talking to you as yours. I stood as well. I hope things work out for you. I genuinely do. But I am not the answer to your situation. He left without saying much else. I watched Robert escort him to the car from the window, and felt the particular emptiness that comes from doing the right thing when the right thing still costs you something. I did not know it yet. But my brother was not finished with me, and neither was my son. January brought a letter. I found out from a letter that arrived through Eleanor's attorney, copied to the firm handling my advisory arrangement with Whitmore Property Group. My son had hired a lawyer. The letter alleged that Eleanor was mentally incompetent, that she had been manipulated by an individual, meaning me, who had gained access to her through deception, and that the relationship between us should be subject to legal review, given her age and the nature of our financial arrangement. It also suggested that as my next of kin, my son had standing to challenge any estate planning decisions being made on my behalf. I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in my hand for a very long time, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not anger exactly, something colder. The recognition that someone you once loved has decided to treat you as a problem to be managed. Eleanor's attorney, a woman named Patricia, came to the house the next day. She was in her 50s, unhurried, with a way of organizing information that reminded me of the best teachers I had ever known. No wasted motion. She walked us through the legal landscape the way you walk someone through a neighborhood they will need to know. The claim of incompetence is the most serious, she said. It has no factual basis, but it requires us to respond. What do they actually want? I asked. Right now, she said, they want to slow things down. They want uncertainty. If they can create enough procedural fog, they may hope you will settle in some way that benefits them. She looked at Eleanor. Mrs. Whitmore, they will request a cognitive evaluation. Schedule it, Eleanor said immediately. I will take 3 if they want. I did the Wall Street Journal crossword this morning in 22 minutes. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. I will also need you to understand, she said, that they may call witnesses, your household staff, business associates, anyone who can speak to Mrs. Whitmore's state of mind and your relationship with her. Call them all, Eleanor said. 2 weeks later, I found out my brother had signed an affidavit, under oath, supporting my son's position. He had written that I had been behaving erratically since the autumn, that I had rebuffed family attempts to check on my welfare, and that my association with Mrs. Whitmore had begun under circumstances that raised serious questions. He described my hospital stay, my departure in the Mercedes, his visit to the house in December, and he characterized my refusal to lend him money as evidence of a change in personality consistent with undue influence. Patricia read the affidavit aloud to us in the study. When she finished, Eleanor said, "What a thoroughly unpleasant family portrait." "I am sorry," I said. "Do not apologize for other people's choices, Daniel," she said. "You have done nothing wrong." The preliminary hearing was in February. It was not a trial, just a proceeding to determine whether the petition had enough merit to continue. My son arrived with his attorney, a man named Garrett who had the particular confidence of someone who charges a lot and knows it. My brother sat beside them, not as a party to the case, but as a friendly witness, studying the room with the calculating look he had worn in Eleanor's front room in December. Patricia presented Eleanor's medical records, all of them, spanning the past 5 years, including the results of the cognitive evaluation she had voluntarily undergone the week before. The evaluating physician who had been asked to testify said clearly and without hesitation that Mrs. Whitmore showed no signs of cognitive decline whatsoever. She scored in the top percentile for her age group on every metric. And then Patricia turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to enter one more piece of evidence." I did not know what was coming next. Neither did my son. Neither did my brother. Eleanor's house, it turned out, had a comprehensive camera system, interior and exterior, running continuously since it was installed 8 years ago. Patricia had pulled the footage from my brother's December visit, and from 2 phone calls my son had made that had been recorded with notification as part of Eleanor's standard business practice. The lights in the courtroom dimmed slightly, and the footage began to play. The video from December showed my brother's visit from the moment he arrived at the gate. It showed him entering the house, sitting without invitation, and then very clearly asking me for a sum of money that was substantial enough that the judge's expression changed slightly when Patricia named the figure. It showed his face when I declined, and it showed him leaving with none of the distress of a concerned sibling and all of the frustration of someone whose plan had not worked. Then Patricia played the audio. In the first recording, my son could be heard discussing the situation with someone. Garrett, it turned out, before the letter was sent. He was not worried about my welfare. He was worried about whether a geriatric judge would buy the incompetence angle. He used those exact words, a geriatric judge. The courtroom went completely silent when that played. The judge looked at my son for a very long moment when the audio stopped. Then she looked at Garrett. "Does the petitioner have any response to this recording?" Garrett made a good effort. "Context," he said. "Taken out of context." The judge told him she appreciated the explanation, and she dismissed the petition on the spot. She also referred the matter of the affidavit to the county attorney for review. My brother, when he heard that, went the color of old wax. In the hallway afterward, my son approached me. He had sent Garrett ahead and was alone, which was more than I had expected. His face looked like someone had let the air out of it. "Dad," he said, "I do not know what to say." "Then do not say anything yet," I said. "I was worried. I want you to know that." Some part of it was genuine worry. I looked at him, my son, 41 years old. Someone I had driven hours to see on school holidays. Someone I had called every week through college. Someone I had stayed up late worrying about in the ordinary ways fathers worry. The choices he had made in the last 4 months were real. The damage was real. And so was the fact that standing in front of me was still someone I had loved before he was old enough to love me back. "I know," I said, "but you need to understand something. Worry does not excuse what you did, and an apology alone is not going to rebuild what this cost." "What would?" he asked. I thought about it. "Time," I said. "Honesty. Showing me something different than what I have seen." He nodded slowly. He did not argue, which surprised me. Maybe losing in a courtroom takes something out of you that losing in a conversation does not. My brother called that evening. The county attorney review had concentrated his mind. He was on the phone for 11 minutes and spent most of it cycling through justifications before arriving at something that eventually sounded like remorse. I told him I would not push for any additional action regarding the affidavit, but that I wanted the same thing from him that I had told my son I wanted: distance for now, and honesty when the distance ended. Eleanor and I talked about it that night, sitting in the library with the fireplace going. She had a habit of asking me things instead of telling me things, which I had come to understand was her way of making sure I arrived at conclusions that were actually mine. "How are you?" she asked. "Tired," I said. "Relieved." Something in between. "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about that seriously. "No," I said. "I would rather know who people are, even when what they are is disappointing." She nodded. "My husband used to say that the worst thing a crisis can do is clarify, because once you see something clearly, you cannot unsee it." "Is that a warning?" I asked. "It is an observation." She looked at the fire. "You have been very steady through all of this, Daniel. Steadier than I expected." "You had a camera system," I said. She laughed. "A real one, loose and sudden. The kind she did not produce very often." "I did have a camera system," she said. Spring came, and with it, a formal partnership agreement that Patricia and Whitmore's business attorney spent 6 weeks negotiating. I was named managing partner of Whitmore Property Group. With a clear path toward the succession arrangement Eleanor had first described that morning at the breakfast table. Her grandchildren were informed, and as she had predicted, were grateful and unbothered. They came to meet me in April, a woman and a man in their late 30s, both straightforward and kind. They shook my hand and said they were glad their grandmother had found someone she trusted. The work was demanding. Eleanor had been right that I had an aptitude for it. But aptitude and fluency are different things, and there were months when the gap between them felt very wide. I made mistakes. I admitted to them. Eleanor corrected me without theater, which was more valuable than any kindness she could have offered in its place. My son reached out again in the summer. This time he did not want anything. He asked if we could have dinner. I said yes. We met at a restaurant midway between the property and where he lived, and we talked for 3 hours. Really talked. The kind of talking that does not happen between people who are managing each other. He told me things about his childhood he had never said out loud. I told him things about mine. We did not resolve everything. 30 years of distance does not dissolve over one dinner, but we made a start. My brother's situation resolved itself in ways I had not engineered. The county attorney found the affidavit insufficient for prosecution. Some technical standard was not met. He received no charges, which I was told and felt a complicated relief about. He called me in July. We talked briefly. He did not ask for money. He did not explain much. He said he had been doing some thinking. I told him that sounded like a good use of his time. One morning in September, almost a year to the day after that Wednesday in October, I asked Robert to drive me to the hospital. Not for any procedure. I just wanted to go. I walked into the lobby and stood near the window where I had sat the year before. It was a Tuesday, busy. The usual traffic of people in various states of worry and relief. I sat in the same chair, or one near enough to it that I could not tell the difference. I sat there for a while, just watching. A man came in alone, maybe 65, holding his arm against his chest. His face doing what faces do when you are trying to hold something together in public. He sat 2 chairs down from me and stared at the floor. I waited a moment. Then I said, "Rough day." He looked up, surprised anyone had spoken. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, you could say that." We talked for 45 minutes. I did not make him any promises about luxury SUVs or business empires. I just sat with him and listened, while he worked through something about his wife and his daughter, and a diagnosis that was manageable but had felt, when it first arrived, like the world ending. By the time they called his name, he looked different, not fixed, but less alone. On the drive home, I sat in the back of the Mercedes, watching the October trees go past. And I thought about the year behind me, the things I had lost, the familiar contours of a life, the comfortable smallness of knowing what each day would hold, the particular numbness that comes from having given up expecting more. And I thought about the things I had found, Eleanor, the work. A version of myself I had not known was still there under all those decades of making do. When we pulled through the gate and down the oak-lined lane, Eleanor was standing at the front door with her cane and a cup of tea, which meant Carol had told her I was on my way back and she had come out to wait. She did that sometimes. I had stopped being surprised by it and started just being glad. How was it? She asked. Good, I said, quiet. I talked to someone. Good, she said. She handed me the cup she had been holding, which I realized now had been for me. Carol made that lamb you like. About 20 minutes. We walked inside together, and the door closed behind us. And through the window, I could see the fountain catching the late afternoon sun. And somewhere in the oak tree, the same bird, or one just like it, was doing something complicated again in the upper branches. And I want to tell you something now. Because if you are still here at this point in the story, you are the person I have been talking to all along. I was left in a hospital lobby with $40 and a bandaged wrist. My son closed a door on me that afternoon that I thought was the last door I had. I thought he had ended something when he walked out those glass doors and drove away and left me sitting in that chair. But I understand now that he did not end anything. He only revealed it. He only pulled back the curtain on the hollow shape of what we had actually been to each other for a very long time. And once I could see that shape clearly, I could stop pretending it was something else. I could stop carrying a version of him I had made up in my own head just so I would not have to feel alone. And I could finally walk out into the life that had been waiting on the other side of the door I had been too afraid to open for 30 years. Eleanor died 2 months ago. I was holding her hand. She told me the day before that she had done the things she had wanted to do. That she had watched a stranger in a hospital lobby become someone worth trusting with the last piece of her life. And she thanked me, as if I had done her the favor. As if I was not the one who had been carried through the door of a Mercedes SUV on the worst day of my life by a woman who had every reason in the world to keep rolling past me and did not. I sit next to people now, she used to say, when I can. I sit next to them now too. If you have ever waited in a room of any kind, waiting for something to get better, waiting for someone to show up, waiting for your life to finally start making the kind of sense you always thought it would, I want you to hear me. Sometimes the person sitting down beside you is exactly who they appear to be. And sometimes, if you let them, they will change everything. The worst abandonment of my life became the door I walked through to find everything I did not know I was missing. Do not walk past the stranger in the lobby. You might be the stranger for someone else tomorrow. If this story reached you tonight, if any part of it felt like it was written about someone you know, or someone you have been, or someone you used to be, I want to ask you a small favor before you go. Hit that subscribe button right now if you have not already. It is completely free, and it tells me you want more stories like this one. Tap the like button because it genuinely helps this story find the next person who needs to hear it tonight. And then, scroll down to the comments and tell me who was your Eleanor, who sat down next to you when the room was empty. Or tell me about the day you walked past someone in a lobby and wish now that you had stopped. I read every single comment. I answer as many as I can. And I promise you your words will matter to somebody else scrolling through in the middle of their own hard afternoon. Stay with me. There are more stories coming. And the next one is going to hit you exactly where you did not know you needed it.